being flexible and adaptive in the military is kind of how it goes, right? You never have enough time or enough resources, and the mission's always changing. You just kind of adapt, and that's the same way it's been for me as I talk about the business story. So the way I got into this is 2008, 2009, I was in Iraq for the surge, you know, kicking indoors and solving problems, and then came home from that in December. In April, I was out. So I found myself on unemployment. So like literally, like was in Iraq doing great things, like leading a lot of people in the Army, like had things going on, and I get out of the Army and I have an unemployment card. You know, you can get angry, you can get sad, you can drink for a while, you can do whatever, but like, where does that leave you, right? I mean, in the Army or any branch of service, you face challenges and you accept it, you move on, and that's kind of where I ended up. So I decided, like, if no one's gonna hire me and no one thinks I have any value, I have value, I'll do it myself. But sustainability, in some forms, I think, has a way to move forward. So some of the stuff is a little bit out there, but some of the stuff makes sense. Well, you need a lot of money to build a windmill power plant off the coast. You need a lot of money to build a solar energy company. But recycling, everybody's driving around neighborhoods picking up scrap metal. So I started looking at scrapping and recycling and demolition and things like that. I got really into electronics recycling, so recycling cell phones and computers, but that is only about 2 or 3% of the waste stream. And then when you look at the pie chart of all the trash in America, 2/3 of everything that gets thrown out every day is compostable. So that was the other criteria, is what could I do with the money in my pocket? So I had the money in my pocket, and I'm looking at that pie chart with 2/3 of everything in the country is compostable. Well, lots of people are recycling metal, no one's composting. And so I thought, here's a great opportunity, a lot of raw material and not a lot of competition is either a great idea or it's a terrible idea and there's a reason no one's doing it. So let's explore and see what's up. So I just Googled everything. I just spent all my time researching everything I could find on composting. I'd read articles, I'd watch videos, I'd call up the people who wrote articles and I'd say, hey, I saw your article, can I ask you some questions? You know, hey, I saw you have a compost facility, can I come visit? And I just started spending my time driving around trying to learn as much as I could. So I went to business school and the Army paid for half of it. So I started doing that at night because I was like, all right, I'm kind of like out of the game. I need to figure out how to get smart on business. And then there's the Small Business Development Center. So the SBDC is a free office that every college in America on different college campuses, every city has one. And it's free. So they're free business coaches that you can go and sit down with. So I went to some of their classes. I sat down and listened to what they had to say. They recommended a book, The Art of the Start, which I should start getting credit for how much I talk about this book, but it's a great book. So The Art of the Start by Guy Kawasaki, a guy who was there in Apple in the early days. I started looking for properties, and I did all the things you're supposed to do. I reached out to like economic development agencies. I reached out to commercial real estate agents. And this is in 2009, 2010, the absolute bottom of the real estate market. No one's buying anything. And no one would return my calls. Nobody. Nobody, not one email, not one call back ever. What happened is you know, I get it. Like the business proposition for me as a tenant is, hey, like I want to rent a couple acres of land. I want to take in tons of food waste and wood chips and manure, and I want to make compost. I've never run a business. I've never done anything like this. I promise I won't make a mess, and like I don't have a ton of money, but I can definitely cover the first 6 months. So I get maybe why people didn't return my calls. I don't know if I've returned my calls. So what happened is I ended up going to where I went for a lot of things with this business, and I went to Craigslist. And so there was a farm for rent in Aberdeen. That's where I ended up. These guys were willing to rent me a 30-acre farm, and so we signed a lease. And when I signed the lease, I had no customers lined up. I just had this like plan I'd made. I'd never done composting bigger than someone's backyard, and I'd never run a business. So I was like, all right, let's see where this goes. At the same time, I finally got a job offer. So I got a job offer to go work in Afghanistan. So my backstop on this whole thing was, if everything goes south, I'll just go to Afghanistan. So that's pretty good motivation to like get up every day and like work harder. I got started, I hang the sign out front, I'm all excited, and I go around because it sounds like everyone wants to sign up for my service. And then when I went to every restaurant and knocked on the door and said, hey, do you want to sign up for food waste composting? People were like, what are you talking about? People thought I worked for like a soup kitchen. I was trying to collect stuff. Because I was ahead of the curve. No one had really heard of composting. Now, if you open any trade magazine for grocery stores or restaurants, the National Restaurant Association has a committee devoted to composting. There's all kinds of outreach, and it's a common thing. But 7.5 years ago, I was the only guy out selling something no one knew they needed. After 6 months of being in business, the first 6 months from July to December when I signed lease, I made $350 total. That's not $350 like after taxes profit. I made $350. I'm paying thousands of dollars in insurance and like rent. I'm like buying all these supplies. I'm like feeding myself. And I took in $350. If I bought lottery tickets, I would have come out way ahead. So I wrote all my emails, I worked on my website, did all my social media. And I think what I told like at the last presentation is I learned an important lesson early on is if you're gonna do middle of the night work, understand that people get really weirded out when they get middle of the night emails, right? Everybody has a phone nowadays. So if you get an email from me at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're like, I don't know if I want to work with that guy. He's a wingnut. So I started setting time delays on all my emails and all my social media posts. So now everything happens at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. So I don't seem as much of a crazy person. And I got a call from a restaurant, and they were composting with another company. And they said, look, the company we have just isn't reliable. They don't show up when they're supposed to show up. And these bins sit here, they get smelly, it's terrible. We're a seafood restaurant. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I'll come on Friday at 1 p.m. I'll be there to meet with you. They're like, great. Friday comes around, it snows, and it snows in Maryland like maybe an inch or two. But in Maryland, it's enough to like close the place. So people are freaking out. So I leave real early because I know the traffic's gonna be bad. I get down there, I walk in the place, when I said I was gonna walk in the place. And their minds are blown. They're like, we didn't think you were coming because of the weather. We didn't think you were going to get here. I'm like, I thought the whole point of me coming here is that people don't show up when they're supposed to. So they were like, cool, like send us your contract. I'm like, no problem. Then I like go back to the farm and I'm like, I don't have a contract. I need to write one. So then I make a contract, like official sounding, and I send it to them, and they signed up on the spot. And that was my first customer, right? Just showing up when I said I was going to show up, and they signed up. And then we went from there. So I signed them up as a customer, and I realized I don't have a way to pick up the bins. So the deal was I would drop off these wheeled bins, 64-gallon bins, and you fill it with food waste, and you pay me twice a week to come haul them away. And the win for you as a restaurant is you're doing something better for the planet, but typically this is a cheaper option than trash service because trash is getting more and more expensive. So you're saving money as a restaurant owner, and you can feel good about it and advertise to your customers. So it's a win all around. And then I get a monthly income because I know what my monthly service fee is, so I got this like reoccurring monthly fee coming in. So it's good for me because I have this monthly fee that helps pay all the bills for the farm. So it's a good service, but I didn't have a way to pick up the bins. So I drop them off, and then I'm like, how am I gonna come back and get these? I don't have a way to collect them. At the time, all I had was this Chevy Trailblazer. So I go back to Craigslist, and in a panic, I buy a 10-foot trailer, and I show up, and I wheel the bins on, bring them back, dump them, and wash them. And we compost the food scraps, I wash them out. And that became the way we did it because we had to. I couldn't afford, a trash truck is like $250,000, like a new one. I couldn't afford that, I didn't have that money. I had money for $400 for a Craigslist trailer, so that's what we got. And what ended up happening is because we did it that way, I washed out the bins and gave back a clean bin. And that's been like our calling card the whole time. For all of our services that we do, that we collect, we give you a clean bin every time. No one else does that. And so that, even as more competitors have started to come into the compost field, like that's our sales pitches. Hey, if you're a condo owner in Adams Morgan, you don't want to wash out your residential bin. If you're a restaurant or hospital in Baltimore, you don't want to wash out your bin. So we're clean, right? So we start with that one customer, and the business since then has grown. Once you have the one customer, then you can point to them and say, look, I have a customer. Look at, and then you start to build your resume as more and more people signed up. And so from the day I started, 18 months in, we broke even. So after 18 months, we were break even. The place was paying for itself without me putting more money into it, which is like, thank God, because I don't know how much was left at that point. And then since then, we've continued to go. So started this thing in July 2010. It'll be 8 years this July that we've been in business. And we went from me being the only guy in the place to now we have, we just hired a guy last week. So we have 15 or 16 people full-time on the payroll. So we have 8 people down here in the DC, Virginia area, and then 8 people up in Aberdeen. We run 2 facilities now. So we have that original one in Aberdeen that we've had since 2010. We have another one here in Fairfax, Virginia that's smaller. And what the business has grown into is, the gist of the business, like I said, we're picking up food scraps. So we do everything from people's homes to big businesses. We also take in material from some other companies that haul it to us at our facilities, and we charge them to drop it off.